everyone, and welcome to this mental health panel. I have a challenging task today to ensure that we get the best insights out of this 5-member expert panel within the stipulated time. So I'm not going to waste too much time. I want to begin with you, Dr. Aditya, to get the conversation going. So in a city like Bangalore, it has become increasingly common to hear mental health terms such as stress, anxiety, and depression in regular conversations as well, which is very welcome. But what do you think is forgotten, or what are we overlooking in our discourse about the consequences of stress on both mental health and physical health of urban dwellers? What are we missing?
Thank you for that interesting question. Thank you also for this invitation, and I'm honored to be on this stage. I think two things. One is for a few years now, we have actually understood what makes for a happy and healthy middle age and late life. If you look at really long-term studies like the Harvard Healthy Aging Study, we know that a few things in our lives will help promote health. Diet, exercise, education, and relationships. And what has been interesting to me as a psychiatrist is the single most important predictive factor of a middle age that is happy or healthy is the quality and the depth of your relationships. And yet when I look at, and because this is all about Bengaluru in the future, when I look at how we bring up our children and our young adults, we are focusing extraordinarily heavily on education. We may be focusing a bit on diet and a bit of, if you join the local Gold's Gym, then a bit of exercise. But we are not at all addressing the big elephants in the room, which is what are we preparing our young people for? So I run a 60-year-old hospital, so I'm very biased. I'm in the illness space. I'm not in the wellness space. I should say that to you all. But in the illness space, we see a lot of anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, a lot of brain diseases, for example, that have nothing to do with stress. But the stress is inevitable. And I think you cannot bring up young people by scaring them into studying for exams and then expect that magically by 18, 19, 20, they'll have dealt with the stress till it's no longer there. The stress and the anxiety in education is being used as a fuel to help people do better. But once you do that to a child, you have scarred them for life. You have killed some creativity, you've killed some imagination, you have lost their love for education in the first place. And then you're saying to all our young people, I want you to be less anxious, less stressed, less depressed. If you are making a child do something that is unnatural, sit in a class for 8 hours a day for 15 years, what are you going to expect but unhappiness? It is this as a society that I think, and I'm biased, I think we may need to pay more attention to. The hospitaling, we will do. There is a lot of mental illness to deal with, and I'm very happy that people are coming because we are now seeing people earlier than before, and we can actually help prevent progression to severe illness. The government is doing an amazing job, so Karnataka is well ahead, and Dr. Rajani is sitting here, our health minister is sitting here. We are doing an amazing job, but there is a lot yet to be done. So there is a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression. Some of it, I would like us to consider whether it is a consequence of the way we are structuring our society. Thank you.
That's actually quite insightful, and really helps me segue into my next question, which is to Ms. Tristha. Another important aspect of helping people cope with stressors, as they enter employment, as they start families, is starting young. Now, with increasing academic pressure and other stressors, the role of a student counselor is quite imperative. But there is a gap. We're able to see this gap in either not having enough qualified or trained counselors, or counselors who only specifically focus on career and academics rather than helping students cope with emotional distress. How do we address this gap? Where do we begin to fix this issue?
Thank you. I think I really agree with Aditya's perspective on we need to relook at society at a whole. What do we focus on? What's important for children now than ever before? Definitely there's a huge challenge in terms of the number of trained counselors. Even the way teachers are trained or faculty members are trained, the focus on mental health is not present as much as we should be. So everybody that is in touch with students firsthand every single day should have a lens of being able to screen or at least help identify or support mental health issues. And we need to be able to build that lens into the way we train faculty members. Also, there's a huge challenge in terms of the changing family dynamics in society. Never before have I heard a 6-year-old say, I'm stressed. Where did they hear that from? How did that happen? What are they stressed about? So, as society, we're changing, and our focus on how parents can view and understand their child's challenges. And we're spending a lot of time doing parent education programs to help them understand and see the world through their child's eyes. Parents are unable to relate to teenagers, the generational gaps, even the changing society our children are dealing with. There's a lot of challenges now that we have to face, and I think as a society we need to sort of remove our shades on this taboo topic. No parent wants to say something is happening with my child. They don't want to acknowledge it. So how do we put this at the forefront? How do we talk about it? How do we educate, build awareness? I think those are the challenges.
Thank you. I really like how this is going because it's really tying into each one panelist that I have. Dr. Nirmala, I want to ask you, you have been at the forefront of advocating for the rights and the needs of people with psychiatric illness and their families. Please help us understand the role that families and communities play, because as Tristha rightly said, we need to really look at how children are picking up these terms and how this sort of conversation begins at home, right? So please help us understand the role that families play and the communities play in supporting people with the psychiatric illness, but also if you could touch upon what we call caregiver burnout. And we've had a conversation about this before, but if you could touch upon that would be great.
Thank you, Udbhavi, and thank you, Deccan Herald, for giving me this delightful opportunity to spell out Vision 2040. Believe it or not, I'm ready for Action 2040. That is the spirit with which I've carried through these 2.5 decades of my work in mental health. Most importantly, what I would like, before I answer your question directly, it's very important for us to have a conceptual clarity about mental health itself. Of course, with COVID, there was a lot of spotlight on mental health. But we very often use mental health synonymously with mental illness. This is what I would request you all to understand, because if we have to have a Vision 2040 or Vision 2050 for mental health, we should also be very clear on the allocation and deployment of resources, be it educating families, preparing community. Where do we invest the resources? Should we put it in community or should we put it in families? As far as I see, community is becoming a big urban myth. There is no community. When there is an emergency in any of the families, I have a couple of my members from Maitri We are from Maitri South Zone group of Families Alliance on Mental Illness. It's a pan-Indian advocacy group. And you can ask a couple of family members we have here in this auditorium. When there is an emergency, we don't find any community. We are alone. And these are the misconceptions. This is where using mental illness and mental health in the same wavelength is the biggest misnomer that can happen. So if at all you want to help families, forget about communities. I'm not saying you should not do anything for communities, but very importantly, and I would urge the Honorable Minister on the stage, shift your paradigms from community-based interventions to family-centric interventions. These are very important because each family is unique. We don't have that kind of a template, these are urban families. It's not there anymore. We find that difficult. We don't have that kind of, and another very big misconception is stress itself is not a cause for mental illness. Stress itself does not cause, and the eminent psychiatrist, Dr. Aditya, will tell you, there are other reasons other than stress. So stress is a high-risk factor, but it's not a cause. In spite of not having stress, or for many people, stress is a motivator. For example, I am a solid sitting in front of you. For me, high stress is a motivator. It doesn't cause anything, and as of now. So it's all a misnomer. We have to look at each case. How can families be helped? Families don't need psychosocial education, at least now in the present era. Many of them have access to all this. In fact, they have access to more things than what is desirable or desired by experts like Dr. Aditya. They access side effects of medicine, and question is prescription, which is where we should draw a boundary. At the same time, we don't need psychosocial education. We need the system deficits to be set right. We need an ambulance to be ready in this deep dive city to shift a mentally ill person. Psychiatric emergencies are a nightmare for us, friends. It's a nightmare. As it is, mental illness is a stigma. On top of it, the driver, we call the driver, the violent patient barolla. Illa ನೀವು ಯಾರಾದರೂ ಬರಬೇಕು. I'm sorry, I'm going into Kannada, but I'm sure most of you understand. ನೀವು ಕೂತ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಆಂಬ್ಯುಲೆನ್ಸ್ನಲ್ಲಿ, ನಾವು ಬರೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಇದ್ದಾರಾ, ನರ್ಸ್. So all these things in urbanization by itself. I've seen Bangalore as a 20-year-old bride. I moved into Bangalore. I've gone through Bangalore as a garden city, as a pensioners' paradise, an IT capital, Silicon Valley, and now deep dive city. What do we find? We have to have space for people with special needs. Can Bangalore provide this space for special needs? Can it give equity, diversity, inclusivity for families who are carers for mentally ill persons, families with schizophrenic patients? It's very difficult to get a place to long-term care. Where do they leave them? Should they become homeless, wandering people, adding to the problems already in the urban city? These are important questions we should address.
Got it. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to cut you off there, but we will get back to you, ma'am. Very quickly, I want Mr. Sachi to sort of step in here as a leadership coach, right? And you've been increasingly, off the stage, we've been talking also about the importance of coaching. We have heard about the role that schools play. We've heard about where families step in. I want to understand as business, owners or establishments or corporate setup. There's two things that I would like you to touch upon. So one is essentially how do we prepare these students and these children that then go on to become employees, go on to become business owners. How do we prepare them better for this challenge? I mean, it's a never-ending sort of a challenge that we are faced with, and stress is not a one-time thing. So one is to job-seeking graduates and employees, what is your advice to better prepare themselves? And number two, some best practices that you see can be adopted by the companies and startups and all of the innovators today to support their employees better.
Thank you. So you asked a very valid question. So we are talking about the stress a lot. What is next? What is the future? That is what I believe in the objective of this panel also. I'll start from the students, from Tristha. I totally agree what is happening. But I'll always start the conversation with the students. I'd say that you are your best judge. Nobody can judge them better than you. They're all equipped. The IQ level is so high. But the question here is that, are they struggling with unwanted stress or wanted stress? I will equip them to find it. I said unwanted stress, there is no point in working on it. But wanted stress, we have the solutions. Connecting with the right person. Like ma'am said that there is a stigma. Yes, the overall challenges is as a college, institutions, or even the corporate struggle is as though we say we are too modern, we are fast forward, but still the stigma lies. That's one reason. So as an alternative, how we can equip them to take their own decision. I think the coaching was helping. So I'm supporting a lot of universities and IIMs introducing the coaching as a emotional well-being technique. So I'll say that I'll give you a lot of menu. You can come to as a career coach. You can come to as a wellness coach. You can come to a leadership coach. It's you between me whether I am giving counseling to you or coaching to you. So, but the stigma, or you don't need to tell anyone that where you are going. So that way, it is actually eradicating the stigma, and the percentage from, I'd say the 10% when I was a counselor, to 50 to 60% increase in the people to come to a professional where they can seek help and work on the wanted stress and eradicate an unwanted stress. So nowadays, a lot of universities are introducing that, especially in Bangalore, like Christ University. And a lot of universities, I have seen that. We had done multiple programs there. So that's a good sign. That will help in terms of transforming the students, be ready for the job. Because most of the time, two things I was observing what is students was having. One is relationship issue. That's in the other aspect is that I want to get the job what my parent told, or I want to get a better job rather than my neighbor. So that comparison was the one which they caused in unwanted stress. But I'll equip them what is you are aspiring for, what is your skill set, and I will help them being in their skill set, but respecting the parents, what they wish also, convincing them to reach their level, so that if you're working with a passion, if you're living with the passion, automatically stress will be always in the side path. It will never come to you.
So where will the company's role?
So the companies, earlier stage, it was a tick mark, emotional well-being, counselor, 24/7 helpline support. If you check on all the onboarding, it will be a common thing. But I think the pandemic has reopened our eyes in a different way. Emotional well-being is not only the tick mark job. What I'll say that the companies need to think about, rather than why can't we create a future of the people, whether they can thrive rather than surviving. It should not be like the crisis management which has been surveying. In order to a proactive wellness approach company needs to do. One thing I'll say that when people are joining, so I want to continue what has been there as a curriculum, like old Gurukulam concept, I'll say. Somebody will be mentoring. So those who are the leaders, if we can train them on an empathy-based training, so that they can help in the initial stage, handhold to them, respecting what their thought process, it can help. The other aspect, train the managers, because a lot of the employees, they first go is managers. How they react, managers. A lot of talks and jokes was happening as the people leave the not the leave the companies rather than the managers. So likewise, we need to train the managers like gatekeeper training in order to identify the stress and equip them. So best practices and wellness and mindfulness in the corporate. The cultural shift needs to be there in the corporates, embedding wellness as a part. So you need to say that there is no, I'll say that emotional wellness, you cannot call it as an ethics rather than you call it as an economics. Why I said is that because those organizations in the world which inclusive expertise wellness packages or the programs embedded in the companies, they had seen in the less absenteeism, increase in the productivity, less ideations, and research says, studies is proven says that it is impacting and how it is.
Okay, that's actually a really good point. We'll come back to you, sir, because I want to really close with your thoughts. I want to understand what you have to say about that. But before that, I have a question for all of you, but I'd like the minister to start, and maybe Dr. Aditya can also chip in. We've been talking about AI. We've been talking about, the use of AI. We've been talking about tech. We've been talking, these are all, buzzwords that we hear a lot. People are increasingly seeking out AI, social media for stress management, for mental health advice. Now, these are not exactly trained professionals, right? They're not equipped to deal with an individual as a human being. These tools may help make mental health aid more accessible, but they might do more harm than good. So how do we strike a reasonable balance here in terms of enabling access to these tools, but also ensuring that that access is good?
Well, I think mental health, since it's become a very publicly spoken about issue, and we've been seeing many celebrities and a lot of them coming out and speaking about it in the open also. So it's become a point of discussion and a lot of people are aware of it, even young people also are aware of it. So the problem, I think, is sometimes what happens when such endorsements are there and when it becomes a public discussion, many things can be wrongly read as a mental issue. It could be just normal stress, it could be just normal difficulties that a person is facing. But a young person may think, oh no, I've got a mental problem, or I need to get myself treated. Maybe there could have been a simpler way of getting treated and he could have come out. But I think the question you're asking is now an ubiquitous problem because now we have the most famous doctor in the world, Dr. Google, who is we all consult for everything. Even if we speak to a doctor, after speaking to a doctor, we check on Google whether the doctor, what he is prescribing is right or wrong. So this has become a norm amongst everybody because so much information is available. And along with Google, of course, you have every browser or every app today is connected to AI, and they come out with so much information. So the problem is, I think younger people can get confused, and they may take a wrong suggestion because without actual discussion, we cannot really come to a conclusion what exactly is the problem, and that can also lead to taking unnecessary drugs, unnecessary medications without proper knowledge, and just trying to take something which will lighten your mood or something which will de-stress you, which need not have been done. So now how do you put barriers? I think it's very difficult to put barriers on people who want to consult on the internet. There's no physical way or any other way other than bringing about awareness amongst people. And like what we are doing today in our department is like we are going to schools and colleges and talking to them about life skills. In terms of what is, because we are seeing that younger people are getting into mature relationships because they do not understand relationships, they do not understand issues. So at a young age, when they're exposed to so many different things, how relationships are built, or how to be a friend, or what are the things that you need, what are the things that are required. You see so many things on the internet. You see so many gadgets, so much of stuff, unwanted stuff, and so people at a young age are getting confused, and some of them are not able to handle it, and this is leading to, say, we were just discussing with my own people that how instead of it being a friendship, it becomes a romantic relationship, and it leads to so many other consequences, and having this peer pressure of trying to be on par with others, and also this digitized world that we are living in, it's leading to stress and social isolation, because though you are networked with so many people, though you know so many people, but you are living in your own world. You are doing your own thing in your own world. So there is this certain feeling of not being good enough, not being beautiful enough, not being fair enough, not being smart enough. So this unnecessary competition is crept in. So this is all the impact of a digitized, I'm not saying it was not there earlier, of course it was there, but I think it's got aggravated, it's gone to another level, and there's no control. Earlier there used to be certain checks and balance. Now it's become very difficult to bring about the check and balance. So the only way is for us to get our people aware. Say in a school, the student should be involved, the teacher should be involved, the parent should be involved. In an institution, the people who run the institution should be involved, the people who are working in the institution should be involved. Even people who are working, say judges and judicial officers and police officers, many of them also need to be involved. Many of them need to be brought aware of what are these issues and how it can be tackled. So it's a difficult and exposed world out there.
Right.
And AI is going to get. I'm sure AI is wonderful. I think what information AI can give you is something that is really. I don't think very many experts also can give. But who's accessing that expert knowledge?
Right.
Whether that person who's accessing that knowledge, is he capable of really handling that knowledge? And taking that input and making decisions in your own life, that can be very damaging.
Right.
So I think the intervention of human intervention is very necessary. And for us as a department, just now Dr. Nirmala was, Nirmala, right? Dr. Nirmala, yes, yes. So she was saying, and there is for us lots to do as a government, but at the same time we need to prioritize on what we need to extend more resources on and where we need to really focus on. And I think that becomes a challenge for us because we have hundreds of issues.
Right.
And what is the amount of focus that can we give on mental health issues? And we are giving. I think Karnataka, for your information, I think we are one of the #1 states in the country which has taken up mental health as a serious issue, and we are tackling it at the district level, taluk level. We have got district mental health program. We have a brain health initiative. We have taken this message down to the villages also, where our people are going to house when they go. Even so, we are trying to screen people. We are educating our health workers to screen people whether they have any mental health issues, whether they have epilepsy or dementia or depression or anxiety, so they can go to the next level of consultation. So Karnataka that way is been recognized nationally and even by WHO as one of the best performing states on mental health issues. And I'm sure whatever the panelists here suggest, we will try and take it forward. Like she suggested the ambulance issue,
right,
which is really a critical issue, and we were discussing. Now, suppose somebody is mentally ill, how do you get him into the ambulance? The person doesn't want to enter the ambulance. So, just by calling an ambulance and trying to get that person to the hospital is not possible unless there is some additional help. Because a person who is mentally ill will not want to enter the ambulance. So, what do? They can get angry, violent. So, these are such critical problems and gaps, and how do you fill these gaps? And for that I think we need public, private to work together.
Got it.
Just can't be government, it needs NGOs, it needs institutions, it needs foundations to sit with us, work with us. And for example, I'll just finish off because I don't want to take too much time. Like we have launched a program in CV Ramanagar Hospital, we've given 25 beds with an NGO called the Banyan Tree Foundation. I think that's the name of the foundation. And we've given the facility and the medication. They run the facility and they pick up people who are roaming around on the streets. They are mentally ill, they don't know where they are, what they're doing. They are brought back to this hospital in CV Ramanagar. They're taken care of, then they're counseled because families just let them go because they can't handle them. And then they try to rehabilitate them. So that has been really an eye-opener scheme for us, which we launched last year, and now we want to take it across the state. So these are the initiatives I think where we need public and private and government all to sit and work together, and I think that's the way forward on mental health issues.
Thank you. That's quite insightful. The one point that you mentioned, which really stood out to me, was while AI is definitely useful, we need some sort of an expert intervention, which is why I'm asking Dr. Aditya to sort of really chip in there.
And just before that, I'd say one of the pleasures of being here today is we've already had a conversation with our health minister about the ambulance system problem that you talked about. And Dr. Rajani and I are going to write out a little proposal and go and meet him, and he's very kindly agreed to meet us. So already thank you to Deccan Herald for arranging this program. But with respect to AI, I was going to confess I'm a geek. Now, what I've realized is many of my patients have a very deep and meaningful relationship with their mobile phones. And that the mobile phone is going to be the first port of call for all information. In fact, some of you in the audience will use terms like SEO and so on, much better than I am. But we just created our new website for our hospital, 60 years old, very new website. And I've come to realize our patients no longer look at websites for information. They ask a question of their AI engine. And it is that we as doctors and healthcare professionals must get engaged with understanding what's in an LLM. How do we ensure that the information that is coming to my patient isn't, and what I think my tech colleagues call a hallucination. It's a new word for me, that you're using the word hallucinate as to explain why and how an AI engine works. But there are some really amazing early benefits happening. The AI therapists of ChatGPT in a 4.0, for example, is getting better and better. Every month I ask it a series of questions, saying, if I were a 10-year-old, would you explain depression to me? The answers are getting absolutely fantastic. I've started, because my preoccupation is suicide prevention, I've asked I ask these questions saying I'm feeling unwell, I don't feel like I want to continue living. The answers are getting better and better, and the entry-level therapist in the AI engine that I've paid for is actually getting very close to the entry-level therapists that are being trained across the city. So I'm sitting there thinking, maybe in the future, when we work better with LLMs, not be so frightened of them, and say, can we help people be able to access early therapeutic input into their phones? The second thing we're doing a project with families, and we're also trying to see digital phenotypes of people with schizophrenia. Many of my patients with schizophrenia, when they become ill, they don't know they're becoming ill. It is their family member who might tap them on the shoulder and say, I think you need to go and see a doctor, but of course there's a lot of conflict. Increasingly, we're going to use mobile phones and watches. So we're now doing a project with watches to say, can we spot someone who is becoming ill early on? In the way that Apple was very famously able to diagnose, after a very long time, atrial fibrillation in your wrist. We now are going to be able to diagnose increasing mental illness, and not mental distress. I'm not in the distress space, I'm in the illness space. Serious mental illnesses. We're going to be able to spot relapses earlier than before. So I'm really excited about AI. I would love to see what's coming out of China, and I'm sure policymakers are worried about this, but I would like for us to see this and engage with it from a health perspective, to say what can we teach our LLMs that will help our patients, and more importantly, our families.
Right. I want to quickly also question you on that one aspect that you said, that they are getting entry-level AI chatbots or platforms are getting as good as entry-level, probably as good as entry-level therapists. Does that also mean that we need to sort of step up how we train our new age counselors and therapists?
Oh my God, yes. Yes. It doesn't, anyone in this city can call themselves a counselor or a therapist. I worry about the lottery that my patients go through. They knock on the door, somebody's fantastic, their Instagram page is wonderful, they're talking about all the stuff, all the new buzzwords, trauma dumping, trauma bonding, all sorts of stuff. You've heard the words. But actually, there isn't the stuff to back it up. This is what we as a population need to care about. Are we going to just say counselors are people who care? No. We're going to have to figure out what kind of counseling are we going to teach our counselors, what kind of therapies. How do we not confuse therapy and coaching? How do we not confuse the illness space and the wellness space? How do we actually provide health care? Let's not be ashamed to call this health care. It is health care. And how do we train the clinicians of tomorrow? So in our hospital, we're training about 300 a year, but we're going to have to get better at this. And I think, I know our government can't solve all our problems, but if we work better with our government and say, can we agree on a regulatory framework, on an accreditation framework that we will all sign up to?
We just have a minute, ma'am, but...
This minute I want to convey my compliments to the government of Karnataka, but probably the minister is not aware of the fact. Karnataka was the first state in the country in 2008 to have a dedicated psychiatric ambulance facility. 2008, no other. Similarly, it is the first state in India to have doorstep delivery of psychiatric services. Assisted home care is being piloted by Government of Karnataka with the help of NIMANS, and once again I think the compliments go. Let's all give a big hand.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for your insights. I'm sure these are great points to work on for people to collaborate, and I'm sure these are things that we can take away as well. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everybody for listening in.